Hey out there, welcome to the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about Amazon. They have mandated that they want their employees to come back to the office effective January 2nd, 2025. We're going to talk about that in concert with an article I'm going to share with you. Please feel free to leave a comment to let me know if you agree or disagree with remote work. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this article that talks about how Amazon has mandated that they want their employees to come back to a brick and mortar work environment. Before I get into the article, some of the other companies that are coming around to adopting the same policy in part or in full as Amazon is Walmart, I think Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Salesforce, Starbucks, and IBM. So let's go ahead and dive into the article and find out exactly what Amazon is talking about and their rationale for requiring that they want their employees to return back to the office. At Amazon, remote work is becoming a thing of the past. The tech giant returning to office policy goes into effect today, which was basically yesterday. This is being recorded January 3rd. A new chapter for the company, and one that experts say will be closely watched in the business community, potentially even leading to copycat policy. So I think a lot of the more tech-savvy, larger employers throughout the United States are kind of sitting on the sidelines right now to see how fluid Amazon rolls this policy out, how they integrate this return to work environment, and how it affects the bottom line. And if it's successful, don't be surprised if you start to see more companies adopt a similar policy in kind. So this all was announced back in September of last year by the CEO, Andy, that basically said that he wanted the workers to come back to work. He says it basically would set up a more collaborative and connected, basically, work environment. What also did they say here? Yeah, a representative for the company shared that buildings are ready for the majority of Amazonians today, but added that some locations, there may be different timelines. We're communicating directly with employees in those locations. So obviously, Amazon being a massive tech company that has a footprint on a lot of different states throughout the country, some are going to probably go into effect a little bit quicker than others, but it looks like they are basically set up to basically roll this out and not look back. Nearly 3/4 of 700 Amazon professionals in a poll by Glassdoor said they were rethinking their future at the company following the mandate. So basically saying that, hey, they don't know if they're going to subscribe to this. I don't work remotely, so I try to kind of stay away from things that I don't have firsthand experience, because I think that lacks a little bit of intellectual honesty to tell someone how they should feel, but they don't work in that environment. What I will say in principle on a more macro scale is that you just have to remain flexible. You have to understand that as a W-2 employee, you don't mandate the work conditions and circumstances. Your employer does. Now, there's unions and there's labor laws and things of that nature. I'm talking about beyond the scope of that. So if you don't have something in writing, and I talked about this last year on a video that I did about remote work before, unless you get something in writing from your employer that basically says that in perpetuity that you can work remotely, I wouldn't be adopting and changing my lifestyle too much, assuming that because for the last 6, 12, or a couple of years, my employer has allowed me to work remotely, that policy is going to continue in the foreseeable future. You just never know. So a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard the stories, they took their West Coast income and they moved to the Midwest and basically extended their buying power tenfold. And all of a sudden they got that notice from HR that you got to come back to work. And those folks have bought homes and did other kind of things that you just can't liquidate just because your employer has changed their policy when it comes to remote work. So if you're going down that road, my advice would be, and this is not legal advice, look over the agreement, first of all, get the agreement in writing and have a competent labor relations attorney review that to make sure you have an ironclad agreement. So if you're going to make a big purchase, you know you have something to fall back on if things change. While Amazon is one of the largest companies to announce a full-time return to work mandate, it certainly isn't the only one to do so. I named a few of them. I also left off AT&T. So this is really, really interesting because one of the key points in this article talked about how people who are currently working remotely were saying that they felt they were more productive, and if they went back to a office work environment, that they would be less productive. And it's somewhere here in the article. I don't want to go into it in great detail, but what I deduce from that statement is that one could surmise by saying that, are you saying that before you're able to work remotely, that you're admitting now that you're inefficient? See, there's two ways to look at that. The pushback on the remote worker saying, hey, I'm more effective now. If I was to go back to work, I wouldn't be as effective. So you're also saying that when you were working in the office environment, you weren't as effective. So you can't have it both ways. You can't push it back to the employer and say, hey, the reason why you don't want me to come back, I'm going to be less productive. You need to be productive whether you are in the office or not. And that productivity level basically should not change. Like I said, I know it's a very, very heated debate. And some people feel that when they work remotely, there's some distractions. I mean, I'm sure you guys have had some customer service calls where you hear a dog or a kid in the background. Like I said, I don't work remotely, so I can't speak to that in terms of whether or not it's an efficient way to work. I think for those who do work remotely, if I was just thinking objectively, I think you would want to create a dedicated workspace. You probably want to set up a routine. Take some breaks, just make sure you have something that's going to set your expectations up for success. And I think also one of the drawbacks to that is potentially that in the event your employer is getting to the point where they're having to lay people off, there's something about human interaction in relationships that bonds the employee with their immediate supervisor, and their immediate supervisor bonds with their supervisor. The reason why I'm saying that is that if you're just a number or a liability from a wage standpoint that's just on a spreadsheet, it's easy to cross that out if you don't have any relationships tied to that person. Very, very easy. So tread lightly. It's going to be something to watch. Like I said, a lot of the bigger companies are sitting on the sidelines to determine whether or not this is going to be an effective workplace model for Amazon. But I think by and large, the majority of companies are going to adopt some type of hybrid work environment where you work remotely for a couple of days in a week and maybe you come into the office or you just come in for quarterly meetings. So at the end of the day, be careful, be flexible. Be flexible. If you haven't read a book called Who Moved My Cheese, please look that up. It's a good read. It's about procrastination and how you can self-destruct when you're not willing to adapt to new changes. So this is going to do it for the Kevin Strong Show. If you enjoyed this particular episode, do me the honor by hitting the thumbs button. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so at this time. As always, keep your credit score up and your debt down. Have a great weekend, ladies and gents, and I'll see you in the next one.